Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of PRO632 Radio. Today we got Josh Peak and Gavin here, some track gurus. Going to teach us some track prep and conditions on the track. So we're going to send it over to Gavin and give us a little intro on yourself, sir.
So Gavin Carter here. I've kind of been all over the place. Done a lot of series, worked at some racetracks, and then now my new venture. As you can see on my sweatshirt here, SPS, Surface Performance Solutions. We also have Sick Prep with Sick Week going on this week. Getting on with you guys today on our drive day of Sick Week. So a little recovery day for us on the prep side before we get back at it tomorrow down at Bradenton and then over to Orlando and Gainesville to finish out the week. But kind of what we do on our side is, we on the Sick Prep, we prep the racetrack, go in beforehand, get everything right, and then during the event, we make sure everything's running as smoothly as possible from the ground. And then obviously I do some work from race control as well, a little bit of the event management side of things too. So working hand in hand with some of the other guys like Thomas Bemis and Weston Nichols and Jeb and a whole bunch of other folks that we kind of have under our SPS Sick Prep umbrella, where we go all over the country. This week it's been just Florida and South Georgia, but in a few weeks, I'll be back down for World Series. We've got Texas 2K. We've got all the TB promotions races, bracket races, fling races, World Cup at the end of the year, along with a whole bunch of other stuff that it's on my calendar, not on the top of my head, but all kinds of stuff.
All right. So, hey, thank you quick for the intro. Let's take it over to Josh for a little intro about himself as well.
Yep. Josh Peak. Kind of have come from various background of racing, kind of been all over the place, worked with IHRA for a long time, way back in the day, from a starter to a division director to, we started a new sanctioning by the WDRA, then back to IHRA, running Galot Motorsports Park. Been around the sport pretty much my entire life, and now started my own thing with this deal with Track Specialties, JP Track Specialties.
All right, let's go into questions, answers type situation. Jason?
So, Josh, explain a little bit of what the procedure is for you, because I caught a piece of it last night on Boost and Bullshit there, and there was a lot of unanswered questions, like what are you analyzing on the track?
Just various things, really. Keeping an eye on things like what they're doing on the racetrack. Like when we're at the Street Nationals, obviously Wade spends a lot of time on the racetrack, working very hard, being sure that everything's where it needs to be, and giving them updates on track prep or if there's any cleanup involved. Oil in the left lane from the 330 to the 660 and what they did to clean it up. UV, readings, keg readings, really just doing my best to keep everybody informed of what's happening on the racetrack at all times.
Now, what is UV rating? What's the UV have to do with it?
Just the ultraviolet UV from the sun. Gavin can attest to this, or anyone that's been involved in track prep in the last 6 to 7 years, especially. UV has a bigger effect on glue today than it ever has. Way back in the day, years and years ago, you really weren't concerned about it as much. But I think with all the changes that's happened with glue over the last, I'll just say 10 years, it seems to affect it more now than it ever has. And guys really like to pay attention to that.
Okay. So Gavin, how do you work with that UV stuff?
So with UV, along with like what Josh was saying, you take in ambient air temperature, even wind and things like that too, can kind of affect what you do to the racetrack. More UV, more sunlight, more heat could mean a greasier racetrack if you're spraying a lot of glue, which can be a problem if you're doing any kind of racing. But like radial racing, for example, you see a lot of those guys, it's kind of, you see a lot of good runs at night with, better air, no UV. keeps the track nice and firm and tight, because whenever that UV and the sun hits it, if there's too much product on it, it can cause that rubber to be kind of loose and kind of make a little bit of a skating rink. It may feel sticky to the foot whenever you walk out there, but when you go to apply that much power down, it just can't hold it, because you need a little bit of firmness there to be able to hold some of those tires whenever they're making power trying to go down the track.
So going back to Josh, you said a thing called keg reading.
Mm-hmm.
Can you?
You see a lot of the guys out there. You watch anything on drag racing anymore, especially pro mod racing or NHRA or whatever. You see those guys run out there with the little green box that they put on the ground and sit there for about 15 seconds with it, and it gives them a reading, whether they have it set up in foot pounds or newtons, and basically it gives them a reading of how much grip is on the racetrack, to kind of put it into layman terms or whatever.
What's a good grip number?
What's a good number? I mean,
Yeah.
anything, you're 3,000 and more is pretty good.
So I use the stand on and turn one on our
old-
Mountain Motor Pro Stock car. And comparative to price, I saw some of those keg things online for almost like $6,000. The data, what all data does that keg provide you for the racer? That the laser and the trying to make sure I turn it every time right, the same time every time. Comparative.
I think it takes a lot of that out of it. A lot of the question of, am I standing on it the same way? Am I pulling on it the same way? And that sort of thing. I think it takes a lot of that guesswork out of it. Consistency, I think, with giving the guys information, it's kind of like, you wouldn't go out there all day and check track temperature with 2 or 3 different temp guns, because that really puts you all over the place. So consistency is the main thing. If you're doing it for a car and you're the guy that's doing it every single time, then what you relate it to is only matters to you guys. But I think consistency and just doing things the same way every time is very important.
Now, somebody asked to put a question out there. Why do you think track prep has become so important now versus 10 years ago? Obviously, the cars can run faster, and they are.
Yeah, I mean, Gavin, you can add to this too, but we're faster than we've ever been, and cars just have so much more power, and it's changed.
Right. Yeah. It's changed a lot just based off how effectively and efficiently you can make power happen. It's one thing to kind of be on a dyno and like, oh, I can put out 10,000, 10,000 horsepower, but it doesn't matter if you can't, put it to the ground and make the traction happen. Right. So people have gotten a lot better, from a track prep side, from a tuner side, from a parts side. Everything is just kind of slowly improved over the years, where I mean, you look at a class like Pro Mod, right? And that's, 10 years ago running, 70s, 80s, stuff like that is cool. And now look at US Street a couple of weeks ago where we got cars in the 50s and, low 60s. And that's just a testament to cars being able to more effectively and efficiently put power to use in the correct places. And, with that, it doesn't matter if you can put the power efficiently and effectively where it needs to go if you can't get a racetrack where it needs to be too. So it's kind of a hand-in-hand thing where the racetrack, the track prep guy, the tuner, the car, all of us are kind of working in sync with each other, where if one of us is off, it can cause a car not to do what it needs to do. So there's a little bit of a beauty and a symphony when it comes to that kind of stuff, making everything work together well in tune like that.
Yeah, these tuners have gotten so good too. I mean,
Yes.
The power management and what these guys can do with the ramps and the fuel and the power. I mean, it's unbelievable. These guys are just crazy good. I mean, obviously a lot of guys have really good equipment, but the guys that are not only driving these things but are behind the keyboard are better now than they've ever been.
Now, do you see like the track losing grip as it goes out? farther?
You mean
No.
down the racetrack?
Yeah.
No, typically like racing like we were or normally do, it gets better down the track, you know. I think the biggest thing, like from what for me and the value was like at US Streets, the how often or how much the racetrack changed. So we would start at what time, Gavin? 4:30 with Pro Mod,
Yeah.
and the session would be 2.5, 3 hours
Mm-hmm.
long, depending on how things went. So you think about starting at 4:30 and you think about 3 hours later, you know, there's a big swing in the racetrack. The conditions just keep getting better and better, and the more cars that go down the track, not only the atmosphere is getting better, but the track is getting better because of the cars going down it too. So, you know, with 60 something cars, I'd go out there and try to check everything about every 10 pair, just so that the guys sitting back kind of knew the direction of the racetrack.
Now, do you work with the track prep guys to let them know it's starting to go away, or they just?
No, I don't really get too involved with that. Like those guys, they you know, if they asked, you know, I would kind of give them my opinion, obviously, but you know, I'm not there to critique them. I'm just there to, you know, let the racers know what the conditions are. I mean, they did a very good job down there. Obviously, managing the amount of classes that race has is tough. Not only from an operational standpoint, but from a track prep standpoint, it is very tough.
They race radials there too at that race too, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the first race of Duck Series. So we had PRO632 and LDR and X and Ultra cars there. So like what Josh is saying, it's, you know, going from radial prep to slick tire prep and kind of trying to balance that in between, along with mixing in some of the 10.5 guys and index cars and things like that. It can cause lots of swings from, you know, all over the day, because there were some days where we tried to start at, you know, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the morning with Pro Mod, and then, you know, what you see at that time of the day versus, you know, 4, 5, 6, 7 in the evening the one day, you know, there's big swings just in atmosphere and also the track as well, just with the amount of product you're having to use and the type of racing you're trying to get done, because it's an entirely different racetrack on the starting line between a radial car and a slick tire car as far as what they need.
That's a question I had, is changing from the radial racing to a slick tire race track in the same event. And we've seen it many years ago. They had us all kinds of messed up. Big tire car, radial tire car, big tire kind of car, radial tire car. And then they finally figured out, you know, keep the big tire cars together, the radial tire cars together, and it would go smoother. How does that transition from the radial type prep of 500 pounds of glue, trying to clean up the racetrack, so with the big tire cars that go down the racetrack at the same type of event, how does that, you know, play out?
So with the radial cars, they need that glue, need that stick, right? They want to stick the tire and just drive right through the glue that's there and keep them stuck to the racetrack. But with the big tire cars, you hear it all the time talking about wheel speed, and they need what we call a window to be able to get as much wheel speed as they can effectively get until they get to the glue, where they bring in a whole bunch of power. And, you know, my time doing stuff with PDRA and then also the NMCA side and just other Pro Mod series and Pro Mod races over the year, you kind of try to figure out where that window is. And based off the cars that you have, sometimes that window is, you know, 40, 50 foot. Sometimes it's like 80 or 90 foot, depending on the types of cars you have there. And you try to tailor that to what you need. But to be able to get that from a radial prep track where it's glued all the way through the line to a slick tire track, you know, you see the rotators out there all the time to kind of help pound that glue down into the surface, kind of help firm everything up. But there are times as well where there's, you know, too much rubber or too much glue built up, where we'll roll a scraper out there and try to skim some of that stuff off the top and tighten it up, and, you know, give the slick tire guys a nice, you know, smooth and tight and dull looking starting line. But whenever they get out, you know, 60, 70, 80 foot, it's just as glued up and just as good as some radial tracks are out that far.
Okay, so I was paying attention sometimes at the last race. They come about to the 60-foot cone stopped gluing. So that's what you're talking about, the window of not no glue
Yes.
from the starting line to about 60 foot, so we can get some wheel speed to 60 feet because all of us are fat tire people,
Yeah, correct.
and
Yeah.
then
So you need
have the
that wheel
glue
speed.
so we're
Yep.
pulling all of our power.
Right. Yeah,
Okay.
100%. And even with sick week, like what we're doing this week, where we have our unlimited class, which is essentially some of them are pro mods that are street legal pro mods driving all over Florida with Tom Bailey and Alex Taylor and people like that they're running 380s, 390s in the eighth mile, where we have to take it down because most of the drag and drive guys throw radials on because it's a little bit easier for them to be able to do that kind of stuff versus making the switch over to a slick tire. So we're pretty much radial prep most of the day, until we get to that session where it's like, hey, we've got our A class slick tire cars. We got to get this thing churched up for them where they're able to get down. Because if we just let the slick tire prep, if anybody was watching the Freedom Plus stream yesterday, Alex Taylor was having some issues just trying to get a run down the racetrack. They were fighting a water pump issue, and then they think they have some tire issues and shock issues. But they were just coming up and making runs, and they had to come up during a radial session just to try to get another look at the racetrack so they can make the drive down. And they were just basketballing, hopping the tire all the way down and trying to hook it up. And, they came up to us afterwards and said, it's like, hey, we understand that, this is a radial prep track and we're just trying to do what we can to make it down. But it's pretty difficult for a slick tire car to try to go down a glued up starting line.
So either one of you guys seen that new Mickey Bubba radio?
I know they were testing it at Orlando, I think, the other week.
Yeah, it's badass. I was there with Matthew Buck, and we picked up 4 numbers on a slick tire prep. Just unbolted them, put them on, and it went down. We didn't change shock. We didn't change ball link. We didn't change nothing. And picked up 2 mile an hour. They got something going on. We've been testing that tire for a long time, but to your point, Gavin, we've ran it at PDRA.
Mm-hmm.
Jason Moulton was like, slap the radials on there. We'll go up there and, top dragster, run 380, knock that thing right down there. We'll pick up a number or two, just switching over to that drag radial. But now they're making it available to everybody.
Yeah, and there's plenty of applications out there where it takes a little more work running the radial down like a PDRA racetrack. I mean, we had Super Street and things like that ran that smaller tire, and even the 10.5 guys that's a little bit smaller than what pro mod guys run, and even 632 guys run from time to time too. So it just takes a little more work on that end, and even for us, like Thomas and I, whenever we were kind of doing the prep last year for it. Trying to jazz it up a little bit for Pro Street and Super Street cars, but not get too carried away because they could take advantage of having a little bit stickier starting line. But it's like, well, if we do too much to it, then we got to take it all back off whenever we get back to what the majority of the race was, which is big tire, slick tire cars and that kind of thing.
And actually, Goodyear's working on a new Pro Mod tire that I learned at the Mickey Thompson tire test for the few couple of Pro Mods that they do have tires on.
Not many.
Right, not many. It's like a Hoosier. It's like a Hoosier world over there.
Very much.
Yeah.
I mean, about the only thing you see a lot of Goodyears on are the fuel cars and pro stock cars.
You say that, and I was in conversation with Tony Gillig one day because I had tire issues last year, and I was thinking about putting a set of Goodyears on, and he says, "You ever watch Monte Carlo and he pulls out them Goodyears? He's going fast. The track is perfect for that Goodyear at the time, and you pay attention to him, and he'll just pull Goodyears out and slap them on there, and he's fast." But Tony says it's a finicky tire. You know what I mean? It has to have its perfect prep for it to work right. In that tire. Other than that, Chris, you got anything?
Speaking of tires, when you guys take an approach either from the prep side or even from the analytic side of things, when you switch, like PDRA, it's predominantly a Hoosier-based tire and Hoosier-based compound across the majority of the racers and participants. Do you see different readings from different tire manufacturers, and are you guys prepping accordingly for what the majority is out there running?
I think, and I'm not trying to answer for both of us, but I think, when it comes to tire, you're utilizing or changing tires on a rotator based upon what the racetrack needs, more than what everybody out there is worried about, what everybody's using. Because, there's things that the Hoosier tire do to the racetrack that the Goodyear does differently.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's our favorite tire to use on a rotator is a Goodyear Top Fuel tire. It just gives us the best rubber and for what we do as far as slick tire racing and things like that. But I mean, as far as using a Hoosier, even we've at Gainesville this past week, we had to use Mickey's, and just threw some old Mickey's on there. They had a bunch of big bubs laying around, and we needed a new set of tires, so we just threw them on there to try to make it happen. And I mean, they all work, right, but they all have their little quirks about them, like Josh was saying. It's just kind of based off what you're looking for and what you need, and you can adjust whatever tire you're using on a rotator, even a flat track as well too, to give yourself what you need out there.
So we're getting to the point where we're starting to scrutinize this track prep to the point of we're going to hire like somebody like a JP Track Specialties to give us some feedback and analytics on the racetrack. And is that going to be one of those things when we're at this level of scrutiny? Is the compatibility of, like you say, that in your eyes, the Top Fuel tire, Goodyear, puts down the best rubber to the racetrack, but is that a compatible rubber, like to say a Hoosier tire?
I mean, I don't know. I guess I bet if we had a room full of people, yeah. I think, and Gavin, you probably will say the same thing. I mean, if we went to a panel of NHRA pro racers and put everybody in a room and asked them what they thought, you're going to get their own each individual opinion, right? So, the Goodyear, the Top Fuel, the Nitro teams, they don't want you, when they do a test, they don't want you using anything other than a Goodyear tire, because the same tire, that's the tire they use. That's the same tire that is used at an NHRA event when they're prepping a racetrack. And they won't show up if you're going to say rotate with Hoosiers and they're testing. I just think it really depends on who you ask, honestly.
Well, let's just say PDRA, because that's kind of what we all race in the 632 category. And what I notice over there is the vast majority of the cars in the heads-up categories all are on a Hoosier. So that being said, is, say, PDRA, when prepping for that, trying to target a certain number on, say, the keg meter, or to where they create consistency racetrack to racetrack month after month? Or do we just get what we get? And I don't mean that with sarcasm. I just mean, it varies, and then we have to react to it. So what is the approach when, say, being hired by an organization like PDRA? Are they giving you guys some input on, say, hey, this is what we're looking for, and then you two go work together to achieve that? Or you just tell us what we got this weekend, and we have to adapt?
I mean, I'd say in the past, it's been, more so, hey, if there's a track specialist out there and they have questions, or they want to know, like, hey, what are you spraying? Did you scrape this far? What are you doing to the track? It's more so of like, hey, I'll tell you what I'm doing. And that's kind of like the big thing with a lot of people, not just, track specialists, but tuners and things like that too. They would always come up and ask, like, hey, so what are you thinking for this next session? Are you going to scrape it? Are you going to spray it? Are you going to, what are you doing? So it was more so kind of like, we kind of tell you, like, hey, this is what we're thinking. this is what we're going to do. And 99% of the time it was always, okay, cool. Like, thanks for letting us know. And they would go make the adjustments based off of whatever information we would give them.
So, Josh, are you seeing relatively consistent numbers track to track throughout the, like, say, a PDRA season?
Well, I mean, doing this, I've only done it for the U.S. Street Nationals, but I think they do a really good job at trying to give the racers the best track conditions possible and keeping it consistent. I mean, it's hard. It's really hard. I mean, you can go to Galat or you can go to Bristol or anywhere, 131 or Norwalk or Maryland or whatever. Every racetrack's different. The prep is different at every single track. The weather is always different. It's no different than tuning the car. Like there's a lot of different variables, and you can't do the same thing at 131 that you do at Maryland. And it just, you try to do your best to give the racers the best racing surface possible, which I think PDRA has always done a really good job of. And
Who's
everybody has to adapt.
PDRA this year?
What's that?
Do you guys know who's going to be prepping for PDRA this year? Is that something that they'll bring you in for, Gavin?
No, I won't be there this year. They're moving in a different direction, doing some different things over there. So we kind of had a clean break towards the end of last year. So as far as what they're doing over there, I couldn't tell you that. So we won't be there as far as, sick prep, SPS, that whole side of it. We won't be around this year. We're doing some other things this year. They're kind of, like I said, doing a little reset going into 2026.
So now we got to get used to somebody else's prep.
Or you can hire somebody like Josh, and he can give you some feedback on what's out there and start to correlate all that. And Josh, if somebody wanted to contract you for those services, kind of like, I know Jamie Miller and Tutterow and some of those guys used you down here in the winter series. How can the end user or the individual race team get in contact with you to discuss, what those services will cost them?
Hit me up on Facebook, send me a message. My phone number's been public phone number for a very long time. So I'm sure if you just Google Josh Peak's phone number, it probably pops up on
it's on the bathroom wall at Bradenton.
Exactly.
Right.
Totally beat me to that.
Or a milk carton or something. Maybe it's on a milk carton somewhere.
Yeah, I think it's up for a good time call.
Yep.
But
now, and you do that all through the WhatsApp?
Yeah. I created just a couple different boards and
Go ahead,
WhatsApp.
plug yourself. Let's hear it.
What's that?
Plug yourself. How do we get a hold of you?
Well, JP Track Specialties on Facebook or Josh Peak on Facebook.
There you go.
But I created a WhatsApp group and it had about 4 or 5 different channels in there. I was going to use Discord, but I decided against Discord because sometimes not every racer is technologically advanced as others, and Discord's not very common. But most of these big races that we do, they're already using WhatsApp down there, so the racers are very familiar with it. So Gavin or whoever sends something out in WhatsApp, and then if they're just already using WhatsApp for my information as well, they're just switching back and forth, so it keeps it real simple for them.
And you update that how often during a race?
A lot. At least every hour. But like when Pro Mod was running, because the amount of cars and because of how much the track was changing over the 3-hour window of that session, I was trying to get out there at least every 8 to 10 pair of cars. So
yeah, we got a cold front coming in this weekend. Actually, be here tomorrow. So Gavin's got his hands full.
Yeah, we were just talking about that before I got on here about tomorrow, because we got some rain overnight and then a whole bunch of wind coming through, so it'll help dry it out pretty quick. But definitely not going to be not going to be fun for sure. I was enjoying the 70 degrees down here today, and we're dropping back down to like the mid 50s again. So
33 in Fort Lauderdale in the morning. I'm like,
Wow.
I left this stuff a long time ago.
right.
Yeah, it hasn't been pleasant in North Carolina either. It was 38 degrees today and rain all day. So
Now,
Hey.
Gavin, I got a question for you. Like when you're judging the kind of power that some of these cars are going to throw at it, do you prep accordingly to the power of the field that's coming up?
Oh yeah, 100%. So like a bracket car versus a pro mod versus a 632 versus a pro stock car, talking slick tire stuff. The type of power that they produce and put out can affect, what you do to the surface. You don't want to, what we would say, over prep it for a bracket race, because you'll have guys breaking rear ends and breaking parts and things like that, because they're just not equipped to be able to handle that much of a racetrack. Whereas with the pro mod track or anything like that, you're giving them the best track you possibly can every time they come up. And the big thing too is consistency, and that makes everybody's life easier, from Josh's side of it, of giving information to the tuner as well. As long as they're not having to deal with a curveball here and there, and you're able to kind of give them a track that's within the same numbers every time. It doesn't get a big greasy mess. It doesn't get too dried out. The starting line doesn't get too thick with rubber. You just want to make sure that you're giving them the same thing as often as you can.
So, us being 632 guys here and kind of what our niche is, how much or how closely does it compare for, say, a PDRA Pro Boost or Pro Nitrous car versus, say, 632 car? What are you targeting? I mean, obviously we're a lighter horsepower application than those guys. Are you trying to lighten up the prep for us a little bit so we can create some wheel speed with these lower horsepower machines?
Yeah, absolutely. Because same thing. Where if it's too much track out there for the amount of horsepower that can be applied, then it's we're not giving you guys the best opportunity. So it is like a pro mod light track, if you will, where you've seen in the run order that we've done in the past, where we run you guys after the pro mods go. So we give them the fresh prep, the best crack at the racetrack there, where they make their runs on it, and they kind of dumb it down and dull it down just a little bit on the starting line for you guys, where you're able to still have that solid rubber base where you can make a good pass at it, and it's just not super tight where you're going to go up there and that tire just going to lock up instantly, and you're not going to be able to move the tire off the starting line.
Yep. Hey Josh, has anybody ever asked you to quantify the amount of rolling resistance some of the prep takes to overcome? Like down track where we're not really applying any more power and everything's hung out. Let's say, does over prep down track create a rolling resistance?
I've actually had this conversation before with someone about having too much load down the track, slowing the cars down. I don't know. I don't know. It's hard to say, but how you test that would kind of be really hard, I think. But I don't really know, honestly.
Okay,
yeah, I think it's a marginal thing, right? Like it may be like a couple thou here or there, but not a huge swing, like a couple hun or a tenth or anything crazy. It's little numbers that you would maybe see something like that on.
Yes, I just always look at the approach for these cars is like there are no more tenths in these cars, so it's just small numbers in 10 different places.
Sure.
I mean, look at this past race down there at US Street. I mean, the margin to fit 32 cars in was awfully tight. Maybe Jimmy Taylor and Mark Mickey toting the front end for 400 feet was an advantage.
Question for you. So a lot of mountain moto guys go out there, they put the rosin down. I'm assuming that's just to help loosen the track up so they can get the wheel speed, or is there anything extra special when they're trying to put rosin down or whatever at the starting line?
Rosin, as in like a gold dust powder,
whatever they're putting down.
So we use gold dust all the time to help get more rubber down and apply it to the racetrack. You see it, I'm sure you've seen it plenty of times in the pro stock cars where they'll go put a little gold dust down, have them burn through it. With them leaving in the clutches, they kind of take the starting line with them from time to time. So getting them to burn out through that gold dust puts that heat on there and kind of pulls a little bit of rubber off the tire as it's burning through to cover up that bald spot that they produce. So it's really all about with the powder stuff is just kind of trying to adhere more rubber to places that it's not there. But it also kind of dries it out too, where we've used it a few times before. We don't recommend it because gold dust is not cheap, but we've used it for like some oil downs on the starting line and cleanups like that, where we can't get it. We're rotating and we've scraped it a few times. It still kind of feels loose, and we'll put a little bit of gold dust on there and drag it and rotate it in, and it'll kind of firm everything back up because that gold dust just dries it out a little bit and gets it a little firmer for everything.
That being said, it just brought up an interesting idea. After oil down and you have a cleanup, let's say, do you ever use a guy like, Josh to come in there and give you some feedback and say, hey, yeah, it's back to where it was prior to, or even check left to right lane to see how equivalent they are?
So I know Josh does that. And that's something where, if I wasn't really doing the track prep at US Street, that was more of a Wade thing, but I know that anytime that we had to clean up, I was down there helping with it, and Josh was kind of right down there with us, just, supervising. He even hopped in and helped a few times too. But say he was just checking it, seeing how it felt, seeing how things were coming along, and checking the left and the right lane both, and sending out those updates. And it's definitely something that would be useful on the track prep side, knowing like, okay, we had to clean up a 500-foot long transmission leak from somebody. How many points did the track go down the left lane versus the right lane during that time, having to spend some time cleaning it up, putting some product on it and things like that. Did it make a big swing? Is it still within, 50 to 100, or, how far off are we?
A lot of good information.
Hey, so from your perspective, what's the worst cleanup fluid-wise?
Antifreeze.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Synthetics. Synthetics have made it hard.
Yeah. Synthetic oil, that is, you scrape it, you scrub it, you sometimes scrape it again, you put the powder on it. That stuff just takes forever. And it's just whatever the chemical mixture of that is, when it gets mixed in with that rubber and glue, it just does not want to go away. It is a big pain to try to get that kind of stuff cleaned up, and not only get it cleaned up, but get it turned back around to where it was before you did all that. Because essentially when you have that, you have to strip everything away that was there and try to get everything that you stripped away to go back to how it was. So that way you don't have a huge, mismatch from lane to lane.
As we're starting to wind down, I got a little bit of a question for you guys that I've just always wondered. I see a lot of these races, at night. Let's say Friday night is done, qualifying's over, and you guys will be there till the wee hours of the morning scraping the track and then dragging it back in. When you do that, how much of a swing is made from taking that buildup of rubber off and then giving it a pretty light, thin coat on a recently exposed surface from scraping?
So we do that at the end of the day before going into the next day, because there's lots of buildup throughout the day between spraying product on the track, the rubber from the cars, and all that. So trying to keep that surface as thin and tight and where we want it to be is ideal. The more rubber buildup there is, you can manage it, but it requires a lot more work to manage it how you want to. So being able to keep that surface, the same each day, like we talked about before, is kind of a consistency thing too, where if you start off with a thin and tight racetrack, you want to keep a thin and tight racetrack throughout the entire event. You don't want to let it start off be thin and tight on Thursday, and then by the time you get to Saturday, you've got, an inch buildup of rubber on the starting line, and it's just kind of loose, and it's entirely different than what you were testing in and qualifying in. So doing that at the end of the day just lets everybody come in the next day and see where it is and be like, okay, cool, we're right back where we started the previous day. We can make our adjustments as we need to and go from there on the race car.
Yeah, and guys like us, from being around you at some of the races and talking to you in the past, we know a little bit more about it. But you say SPS, or Surface Prep or Performance Solutions. You guys make the equipment that you scrape and prep the racetrack and rotate and all that stuff. What exactly do you guys all do at SPS?
So, like you said, we do the equipment sales side of things, tractors with brooms and rotators and flat drags. We do the mowers, scraper mowers that you see out there now too. We do that. We also do concrete grinding, resurfacing of racetracks as well, kind of like a racetrack reclamation thing, where over time surfaces can lose a little bit of the teeth on the concrete on the starting line, where they don't hold rubber as well. So we can kind of come in there and retexture and reprofile some of these surfaces to help them hold rubber better and keep bald spots from being as apparent and things like that. I do a lot more of the event management side of things as well too. Like we were talking about with the Winter Series, I'm the race director for those events. So I'm more of the eye in the sky kind of guy. And then same thing with like Texas 2K and World Cup. While I have a good hand in the track prep, I also do the back side of things too, where you don't always see me as much, and kind of just behind the scenes, making sure events run smoothly on that side. So a little bit of everything when it comes to the racetrack and the event side of it. Kind of all over the place with all the stuff that we do. So
Tim McGarry's got a good question. It says, what do you guys see as the next technological step, or what's the next for evolving prep? What can racers do more of to understand racing surface throughout the day that you see us not doing? Example, hundreds of pro cars entering PDRA last year, and less than 40 teams that come up and take the track temp, less than 20 that put a surface tension meter down.
yeah, I think that's a big thing. And like with what Josh does, using somebody like that as a track specialist to come out and give you those readings, give you that information, and just having somebody that talks to the track prep guys about what they're doing and just being able to have that information readily available can take a program miles ahead. And Josh, you can speak more on it too, but like that's a big part of it, just having the information about what is going on, what the track is, and things like that to be able to do what you need to with the car.
Yeah, I think so. Either utilizing someone like myself, or having someone dedicated. That's the hardest part for a lot of the guys is, they bring as many people as they can afford to bring, and then they have them doing 100 things, and trying to find somebody to go up there and keep an eye on the racetrack all day is really hard. Mainly a lot of guys that run up there an hour before they're going to run, and then 30 minutes before they run, and just go with what they know. But that, I think that's maybe the benefit that this thing that I'm doing will have is giving everybody the ability to kind of get a good understanding of what's happening, whether it's they're spraying or they're cleaning up oil, and where they sprayed, how far, what the track's doing, what the weather's doing, and that sort of thing. So I think that would be a benefit to a lot of guys. A lot of guys have a guy that does it and for them all the time. And it goes back to, like I said earlier, I think it's just about being consistent, whether it's me doing it or the guy that's working for you doing it every time.
So say a guy like me, I don't have a tuner. I self-tune my car, and I don't have, a torque meter or anything like that. And I hire you, get on your program. How do I learn what the information does that you're giving me?
Well, I'll be glad to help anyone understand anything that they need. That's the good thing about it is I do try to make myself very accessible while I'm there. There were several times where, Jamie or whoever, one time Jimmy Taylor was sitting in the lanes and getting ready to get in his car, and he sent me a text message and was like, "Hey, what do you think?" And things like that, and even spending time with you um, before we start racing or after we start racing. Let's go out there and look at it together and kind of tell you why I'm sending you what I'm sending you.
I mean, 632. It's an expensive class for a lot of us,
Sure.
and I mean, other than Alan O'Brien, most of us just we got enough to get by, go racing, and have some fun. You know what I mean? But there is an advantage, I think, to having a Josh Peak. You know what I mean? Available to say, hey, listen, this is what's going on, this is what's happening. Because like me, it's me and Matt and Eric. That's it. It's three of us. So it's a hard hustle in between rounds. Chris Nelson's team's the same way. Patrick's team's the same way. So there's very few that have 5 or 6 guys in 632, or even 4. Even whatchamacallit, JC Beatty. It's just him and his son and the other guy. So a lot of us don't have that extra manpower to go run up there to do that. So I think you do have a niche in doing what you're doing for the smaller teams, right? If it's affordable, right? So, and
I think it is. I kind of structured what I charged based upon, I'd much rather be out there taking care of 50 cars versus taking care of 5, whether the pay was the same or not.
Gotcha.
I kind of feel like the excitement for me is offering the service to the racer. And if a racer benefits from it and wins, then, that's rewarding to myself as well. Obviously, I'm not trying to do this to get rich, but I'm trying to do it as a service. And I think a lot of guys could, when they see the price and see the information, I really think that they'll see a value in it.
Yeah, I got one for you guys. Something we commonly see, and we've seen it for years. There's an oil down, and you're the next pair and coming into the water box, and you see the guys with lane choice often choose to change lanes. Do you think that's an advantage, or does the lane that gets all the attention suddenly take a swing to be the better lane?
We used to joke about it a lot back in the day. Like, there would be a lot of times where the car with lane choice would switch to the lane that we just did all the work in. I guess depending on what you did or didn't do, but that was not uncommon back in the day of cars switching lanes with lane choice to the lane that was just cleaned up and all the attention was given to. But I think we try to be mindful, and I know I've noticed that PDRA and the way they've done things, you always try to be mindful of what you do in one lane, trying not to let the other lane get too far off. I mean, most of the time, if you're going to spray, you're going to go out there and spray both. If you go out there and have to rotate the heck out of one, you're at least going to go give the other lane a good down and back, especially if you've been out there for 40 minutes. I mean, Gavin, I tell you, I think you'll agree with most of that. You kind of don't let them get too far off from one another.
Yeah, it's, you can't just let one lane sit there, like Josh said, while you're doing all this work on the other lane without doing something to kind of touching it up. There is a science behind this thing. It's a little bit of chemistry where if that product, that glue that you spray on the other side is not activated, doesn't have anything going across it for a while, it kind of goes a little dormant until you run something over the top of it to kind of reactivate it and light it back up again. So kind of what Josh was saying, it's we always laugh like, oh, we're going to do a lane swap. We just, did all this work in this lane. And, that could be the tuner that's, hey, I think this lane's better now because they, spent a bunch of time over here. And maybe I was worried that lane, was it going to be great? And now I think this one's better. And it's, and it could be a mind game too for these guys. And there's always some gamesmanship that goes along with it. So it's our job to be consistent, right? And make both lanes as even as we possibly can. That way the the way the race is decided is by the drivers in the cars. It's not decided by the racetrack and the prep.
So, Josh, what's your availability as far as, NHRA and IHRA and PDRA stuff?
Still trying to figure out some of that, where I'm going to end up this year or what I'm going to be doing. But I'm definitely going back for the World Series race coming up. So I'll be there for everyone that wants to utilize the service for sure. There's some things that I've been working on for this year, different things, different places. So I'm still trying to get the calendar squared away and get some answers to where everything's going to lead for me this year.
Okay. It's a very busy schedule for a guy like you. It's like you choose where you're going to be and where you're not going to be, and obviously you're going to want to be where your customer base is.
Yeah.
The most. Okay, like you said, you'd rather do 50 cars than 5 cars.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like I say, even if the money's the same, to me, having everybody would be just as good for me as having only a handful.
Gotcha.
Because I do want everybody to see a value in it for sure.
All right. Well, you guys got anything else for these gentlemen?
No, thank you for your time. A lot of good information. We appreciate it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for having us, guys.
I appreciate it.
See you at the track.
Your mic's off, Patrick.
Hey, sorry about that. Hey, thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you again next week on another episode of Pro 632 Radio. Y'all have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.